If your business relies on small shipments into the US under $800, then you are likely familiar with the de minimis exemption. Now, in September, the Biden-Harris administration, straight from the White House, they released this statement talking about some changes that are going to be upcoming, which impact people who rely on this exemption. And that means shipments will be subject to increased scrutiny for regulatory compliance, and also that these shipments may be subject to tariffs. So I am going to bring in Andy Church, and we're going to talk about the de minimis exemption and how it affects importers in the US. So let's get into it. Okay, Andy, thank you for joining me today. There's been a lot of talk lately about the de minimis exemption. And so this is something that is definitely going to affect some US companies that are importing goods from abroad. So let's first talk about what it is. So Andy, could you explain to us what exactly is the de minimis exemption?
Absolutely, Billy. A de minimis exemption is a shipment that is, simply put, worth less than a certain amount. And right now that's currently $800. So basically anything that enters the US under the de minimis exemption is not subject to the same scrutiny as sending in a container load of goods, for example.
Okay, so as you mentioned, the exemption applies to shipments that are under $800. What is changing about this exemption or likely to change?
So when I said that they're not subject to the same level of requirements as a container, that is not only duty, which is basically a tax on the goods or considered a tariff or in some cases, but also regulations. So subject to the CPSC oversight, if you're bringing in apparel in a container, you are going to be required to provide potentially a CPC if it's for children's products, where a de minimis exemption is not required to provide that currently. So basically, goods that come in a shipment worth less than $800 fall under an exemption that aren't subject to duties, taxes, or consumer protection regulations that would apply to other goods.
Okay, so these changes are kind of targeted uh, specifically at companies like Temu and Shein in China. But of course, US companies are also going to be affected by it as well. So, so why do you think US importers should be concerned about these changes to the de minimis exemption?
Well, I think importers need to be aware so they can plan ahead and ensure that their goods aren't going to be held up at customs because they didn't ensure that what they're importing is regulatory compliant. So in the end, this is safer for the consumers. And while smaller importers may be concerned, the larger importers and retailers are very much in favor of this enhancement to requiring all goods entering the states to be subject to the same level of scrutiny and requirements.
Okay, so with that in mind, how should companies be preparing for the changes to the exemption?
The best way to ensure that you're an importer or somebody bringing in goods that would right now or currently fall under this exemption is to ensure that they're regulatory compliant. And you can do that by conducting lab tests for the products, working with your supplier factory to test or test on your own, assure that you've obtained any necessary certificates. So many goods in the coming into the U.S. required a GCC, which is a General Conformity Certificate, or a CPC, which is a children's product certificate, to ensure that they're compliant with the regulations. So testing any documentation, certificate documentation, and then documentation for potentially customs and duties that are required on larger shipments, either LCL or a full container, that all those documents are required.
Sure. Yes, so is there anything else you'd like to add about testing capabilities and certificates?
Absolutely. So Insight started as an inspection only service provider over 10 years ago. And now we can help our clients of all sizes with their testing requirements. We have testing capabilities in Guatemala, China, India, and Vietnam, and other countries. We also have a partnership with an online platform where we can help manage and provide certificates that are going to be required for your shipments. So planning ahead to be prepared for these possible or most likely changes in de minimis exemptions, reach out to Insight. We'd be happy to walk you through what's required now and what's potentially going to be required after these changes in regulations take place.
Okay, so thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions about compliance or need help testing your products to ensure that they're compliant with regulations in the US, reach out to us. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel and check out some more videos so that you can get more information about how to manage quality and compliance. So, take care.